Om Namo Vasudevaya. Naranam Namaskritya Naram Chaiv Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriye Nashtaprayeshu Vadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhoti Nashtaki. So continuing with our discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 11, Text 8 onwards. Kadachallok jigyasur gudo ratrayam lakshitah charanvacho ashrunoda ramo bharyamudishya kasachit. Shukdev Goswami continued. Once while Lord Ramchandra was walking at night incognito, hiding himself by a disguise to find out the people's opinion of himself, he heard a man speaking unfavorably about his wife, Sita Devi. Naham bivarmi tvam dushtam asatim parveshmagam strano hi bibryat sitam ramo naham bhaje punah. Speaking to his unchaste wife, the man said, "You go to another man's house and therefore you are unchaste and polluted. I shall not maintain you anymore. A henpecked husband like Lord Ram may accept a wife like Sita who went to another man's house, but I am not henpecked like him, and therefore I shall not accept you again." Iti lokad bahumukhad duraradhyad samvidha patyabhiten saptyaktva prapta pracheta shramam. Shukdev Goswami said, men with a poor fund of knowledge and a heinous character speak nonsensically. Fearing such rascals, Lord Ramchandra abandoned his wife Sita Devi, although she was pregnant. Thus Sita Devi went to the ashram of Valmiki Muni. Antarvatnya gate kale yamosa sushave suto kusho iti kyato tayos chakre kriya munihi. When the time came, the pregnant mother Sita Devi gave birth to twin sons, later celebrated as Love and Kush. The ritualistic ceremonies for their birth were performed by Valmiki Muni. Angadaschitra ketuscha lakshmanasyatmajo smrito takshah pushkal ityastam bhartasya mahipate. O Maharaj Parikshit, Lord Lakshman had two sons named Angad and Chitraketu. And Lord Bharat also had two sons named Taksha and Pushkal. Again, note purport next verses, so just go to the translation. Shatrughna had two sons named Subahu and Shrutasen. When Lord Bharat went to conquer all directions, he had to kill many millions of Gandharvas, who were generally pretenders. Taking all their wealth, he offered it to Lord Ramchandra. Shatrughna also killed a Rakshas named Lavan, who was the son of Madhu Rakshas. Thus he established in the great forest known as Madhuvan, the town known as Mathura. So Mathura was established by Shatrughna. Being forsaken by her husband, Sita Devi entrusted her two sons to the care of Valmiki Muni. Then meditating upon the lotus feet of Lord Ramchandra, she entered into the earth. It was impossible for Sita Devi to live in separation from Lord Ramchandra. Therefore, after entrusting her two sons to the care of Valmiki Muni, she entered into the earth. Tachrutva Bhagwan Ramo Rundhanapi Dhiya Shucha Smaranstasya Gunastastan Nashaknod Rodhum Ishvaraha. After hearing the news of Mother Sita's entering the earth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was suddenly aggrieved. Although he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, upon remembering the exalted qualities of Mother Sita, he could not check his grief in transcendental love. So it was all transcendental love, not just materialistic love. Lord Ramchandra's grief at the news of Sita Devi's entering the earth is not to be considered material. In the spiritual world also there are feelings of separation, but such feelings are considered spiritual bliss. Grief in separation exists even in the absolute, but such feelings of separation in the spiritual world are transcendently blissful. Such feelings are the sign of tasya prema vashatva svabhava. Being under the influence of Ladini Shakti and being controlled by love. In the material world, such feelings of separation are only a perverted reflection. So in the spiritual world, the feeling of separation are transcendently blissful. This is something we have to realize. We can read, we can try to understand, but realizations will take time. Stripam prasanga etadrik sarvatra trasamavaha apishvaranam kimuta gramyasya grihichetasa. The attraction between man and woman or male and female always exists everywhere, making everyone always fearful. Such feelings are present even among the controllers like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, and is a cause of fear for them. What to speak of others who are attached to household life in this material world. As explained above, when the feelings of love and transcendental bliss from the spiritual world are pervertedly reflected in this material world, they are certainly the cause of bondage. As long as men feel attracted to women in this material world and women feel attracted to men, the bondage of repeated birth and death will continue. But in the spiritual world, there is no fear of birth and death. Such feelings of separation are the cause of transcendental bliss. In the absolute reality, there are varieties of feeling, but all of them are of the same quality of transcendental bliss. So that is spiritual world. It is made of Sat, Chit and Ananda. It's complete Ananda. There could be separation, but it gives bliss to the heart. And then the union after separation, it gives more bliss. But then they want to be separated again. So everything is Sanatan, is Sat. Everything is full of knowledge. There is no ignorance there, and everything is full of bliss. Something we can only experience once we go there. Here it gives some experience, but not complete. Tat urdhvam brahmacharyam dharyanna juhot prabhu trayo shabd sahasram agni hotram akhanditam. After Mother Sita entered the earth, Lord Ramchandra observed complete celibacy and performed an uninterrupted Agnihotra Yajna for 13,000 years. Wow. For 13,000 years. Because Treta Yuga means Yajna. Smaratam hridi vinyasya vidham danda kantaka swapada pallavam rama atma jyotiragatatah. After completing the sacrifice, Lord Ramchandra, whose lotus feet was sometimes pierced by thorns when he lived in Dandakaranya, placed those lotus feet in the hearts of those who always think of him. Then he entered his own abode, the Vaikuntha planet beyond the Brahmajyoti. The lotus feet of the Lord are always a subject matter for meditation for devotees. Sometimes when Lord Ramchandra wandered in the forest of Dandakaranya, thorns pricked his lotus feet. The devotees, upon thinking of this, would faint. The Lord does not feel pain or pleasure from any action or reaction of this material world. But the devotees cannot tolerate even the pricking of the Lord's lotus feet by a thorn. This was the attitude of the gopis when the thought of Krishna wandering in the forest with pebbles and grains of sand pricking his lotus feet. This tribulation in the heart of a devotee cannot be understood by karmis, jnanis, or yogis. The devotees who could not tolerate even thinking of the Lord's lotus feet being pricked by a thorn were again put into tribulation by thinking of the Lord's disappearance, for the Lord had to return to his abode after finishing his pastimes in this material world. So this thought of the Lord's lotus feet, because he was in the forest and the deal was he could not even wear shoes. And his lotus feet must be getting pricked by the thorns, just his thought was giving pain to the devotees. And what to think of when he went, he just disappeared or finished his pastimes and he went back to the spiritual world. The word Atma Jyoti is significant. The Brahm Jyoti, which is greatly appreciated by Jnanis or monastic philosophers who desire to enter it for liberation, is nothing but the rays of the Lord's body. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is endowed with great power. The glowing effulgence of his transcendental form is the impersonal Brahman, which is absolute, complete, and unlimited, and which displays the varieties of countless planets with their different opulences in millions and millions of universes. That's Brahm Samhita. The Brahm Jyoti is the beginning of the spiritual world, and beyond the Brahm Jyoti are the Vaikuntha planets. In other words, the Brahm Jyoti stays outside the Vaikuntha planets, just as the sunshine stays outside the sun. To enter the sun planet, one must go through the sunshine. Similarly, when the Lord or his devotee enter the Vaikuntha planets, they go through the Brahm Jyoti. The Jnanis or monastic philosophers, because of their impersonal conception of the Lord, cannot enter the Vaikuntha planets, but they also cannot stay eternally in the Brahm Jyoti. Thus, after some time, they fall again to this material world. Aruya kricharen param padam tata. The Vaikuntha planets are covered by the Brahm Jyoti, and therefore one cannot properly understand what those Vaikuntha planets are unless one is a pure devotee. So the shloka says, then he entered his own abode, the Vaikuntha planet, beyond the Brahm Jyoti. So the Brahm Jyoti is the bodily effulgence of the Lord, rays of the Lord's body. But to enter Vaikuntha planets, one has to go through Brahm Jyoti, because all the Vaikuntha planets are covered by Brahm Jyoti. So we have to go beyond the Brahman realization, come to the Bhagavan realization and serve the Lord. Then we get eligible to enter the Vaikuntha planets. Naidam yasho raghupate suranchayata lila tanoratika same vimukta dhamna raksho vadho jaladhi bandhanvastra puga kim tasya shatru hanane kapaya sahaya. Lord Ramchandra's reputation for having killed Ravan with shower of arrows at the request of the demigods, and for having built a bridge over the ocean does not constitute the factual glory of the supreme personality of God, Lord Ramchandra, whose spiritual body is always engaged in various pastimes. Lord Ramchandra has no equal or superior, and therefore he had no need to take help from the monkeys to gain victory over Ravan. This part we have to understand. Just because he engaged monkeys to help him doesn't mean he needed those monkeys. These are all his pastimes to glorify his devotees. As stated in Vedas, na tasya karyam karanam cha vidyate. The Supreme Lord has nothing to do, and no one is found to be equal to or greater than him. For everything is done naturally and systematically by his multifarious energies. The Lord has nothing to do. Whatever he does is his pastime. It's not like he has to do something. He just does it because it gives him pleasure. Pastime means that gives one pleasure. We have to do things because we are duty bound or we get money for it. The jobs that we do, that's not our pastime. But Krishna or the Lord does everything as his pastime. The Lord has no duty to perform to oblige anyone. Nonetheless, he appears to act to protect his devotees or kill his enemies. Of course, no one can be the Lord's enemy, since who would be more powerful than the Lord? There is actually no question of anyone being his enemy. But when the Lord wants to take pleasure in pastimes, he comes down to this material world and acts like a human being, thus showering his wonderful glorious activities to please the devotees. His devotees always want to see the Lord victorious in varied activities, and therefore to please himself and them means to devotees, the Lord sometimes agrees to act as a human being and perform wonderful, uncommon pastimes for the satisfaction of the devotees. That's why his Janma Karma Chame Divya. He says, all my pastimes, activities are Divya, transcendental. So one has to be a devotee. One has to have the eyes smeared with the ointment of love to see, to understand, to appreciate, to derive bliss from his pastimes. Otherwise, although Ravan was part of his pastime and he was playing his part perfectly, so Ravan was always saying, I'm not afraid of these two sannyasis or human beings just loitering in the forest in separation of his wife. I'm not afraid of them. But he didn't know Ram is not just a human being just loitering in the forest. He is a supreme personality of Godhead. And he does everything that gives him pleasure. That's all. Yasyamalam nripasadah suyasho adunapi gayanti ghagna mrishayo digibhendra pattam tamnak palava supala kirita jushta padambujam raghupatim sharanam prapadde. Lord Ramchandra's spotless name and fame. Spotless. This is what Shukdev Goswami is saying. Yasya amalam, spotless. We tried to find faults in Lord Rama's pastimes. Why did he banish Sita? Why did he hide behind a tree and kill Vali? Why did he do this? Why did he do that? But there is no incongruities in his pastimes or contradictions. They're all apparent contradictions. So that's why we have to hear of these pastimes from a proper source. Lord Ramchandra's spotless name and fame which vanquish all sinful reactions are celebrated in all directions. Like the ornamental cloth of the victorious elephant that conquers all directions. Great saintly persons like Markandeya Rishi still glorify his characteristics in the assemblies of great emperors like Maharaj Yudhishthir. Similarly, all the saintly kings and all the demigods, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, worship the Lord by bowing down with their helmets. Let me offer my obeisances unto his lotus feet. This is what Shukdev Goswami is saying. Let me offer my obeisances because his name, fame, pastime, everything is spotless. Sayas prishto abhidrishto va samvishto anungato abhiva kosalaste yayusthanam yatra gachanti yoginam. Lord Ramchandra returned to his abode, to which bhakti yogis are promoted. This is a place to which all the inhabitants of Ayodhya went after they served the Lord in his manifest pastimes by offering him obeisances, touching his lotus feet, fully observing him as a father-like king, sitting or lying down with him like equals, or even just accompanying him. So these are the devotees who do all this with the Lord. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, Janma Karma Chame Divya. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but retains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Here this is confirmed. All the inhabitants of Ayodhya who saw Lord Ramchandra as citizens, served him as servants, sat and talked with him as friends, or were somehow or other present during his reign, went back home, back to Godhead. After giving up the body, the devotee who becomes perfect in devotional service enters that particular universe where Lord Ramchandra or Lord Krishna is engaged in his pastimes. So whoever we get attached to Lord Ram, Lord Krishna, Jagannath, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Nrsimhadev, Vamandev, Varahadev. We just go to that planet, that loka. Then after being trained to serve the Lord in various capacities in that Prakat Leela, first we go to that universe where Ram or Krishna or Nrsimhadev are having their pastimes. Then we get perfected, we get trained to serve the Lord in various capacities. In that Prakat Leela, the devotee is finally promoted to Sanatan Bhav, the supreme abode in the spiritual world. So it's just like, suppose we take admission in medical college. So after graduating from medical college, after passing all the exams, then we have to do internship, which is called residency. So once we do the internship, means get trained under experienced doctors, then we get to practice our medical field, or medical knowledge. The same thing here. So once we get perfected, we get to train under the different devotees of the Lord in that particular universe. And then we get finally promoted to Sanatan Dham, the supreme abode in the spiritual world. This Sanatan Dham is also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Parastasmat bhavo anyam. One who enters the transcendental pastimes of the Lord is called Nitya Leela Pravisht. To understand clearly why Lord Ramchandra returned, it's mentioned here that the Lord went to that particular place where the Bhakti Yogis go. The impersonalists misunderstand the statements of Srimad Bhagavatam to mean that the Lord entered his own effulgence and therefore become impersonal. But the Lord is a person and his devotees are persons. Indeed, the living entities like the Lord were persons in the past, they are also persons in the present, and they will continue to be persons even after giving up the body. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. So we are always going to remain person. And also, since devotees are persons, the Lord is a person, the relationship, the love can only be between two persons. Devotion service can also be only between two persons. It cannot be that we are serving the Brahm Jyoti. How can you serve light? Purushoram charitam shravanair upadharayan andrishansya paro rajan karma bandhair vimuchyate. O King Parikshit, anyone who orally receives the narrations concerning the characteristics of Lord Ramchandra's pastimes will ultimately be freed from the disease of envy and thus be liberated from the bondage of fruitive activities. This is a Shruti-fal. Here in this material world, everyone is envious of someone else. Even in religious life, it is sometimes found that if one devotee has advanced in spiritual activities, other devotees are envious of him. Such envious devotees are not completely freed from the bondage of birth and death. As long as one is not completely free from the cause of birth and death, one cannot enter the Sanatan Dham or the eternal pastimes of the Lord. One becomes envious because of being influenced by the designations of the body. But the liberated devotee has nothing to do with the body, and therefore he is completely on the transcendental platform. A devotee is never envious of anyone, even his enemy, because a devotee knows that the Lord is his supreme protector. He thinks, what harm can the so-called enemy do? Thus a devotee is confident about his protection. The Lord says, Ye yatha mam prapadyante. According to the proportion of one's surrender unto me, I respond accordingly. A devotee must therefore be completely free from envy, especially of other devotees. To envy other devotees is a great offense, a Vaishnava aparat. A devotee who constantly engages in hearing and chanting, Shravan Kirtan, is certainly freed from the disease of envy, and thus he becomes eligible to go back home, back to Godhead. And how to be freed from the disease of envy? Orally receive narrations concerning the characteristics of Lord Ramchandra's pastime. That's all. So hearing Bhagavatam regularly, Lord Ram's pastimes regularly, one becomes free from envy. Of course, one has to also work on it. From envy to love, to the mood of service. That's what we have to do. Maharaj Parikshit inquired from Shukdev Goswami, how did the Lord conduct himself and how did he behave in relationship with his brothers, who were expansions of his own self, and how did his brothers and the inhabitants of Ayodhya treat him? So, wonderful questions that Parikshit Maharaj is asking and Shukdev Goswami will answer. So that we'll take up tomorrow onwards. So we'll stop here, see anybody has any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, is there any story where Kaushalya Mata, Lord Ram's mother, and Yashoda Mata, Lord Krishna's mother, I mean, both the mothers meet at Saket Dham and bring their Sri Ramchandra and Lord Krishna at that place to play during their childhood. And what happened was, like, while in the evening, while they were going back to their home to Gokul and then to Ayodhya, they took the wrong kid, like just vice versa. Krishna to Kaushalya and Sri Ramji to Yashoda Mother. They bring their, the kids back to their home. And then Kaushalya Mata found that, Krishna is, because he's very, he's a very, what you call that, kid, of very kind of, people say naughty kid, jumping around here and there. So he found that how come Ram become like that and all that, those kind of sweet memories. Is there something like that comes in the past times?
I haven't read, but I would love to know more about it.
Actually, this was my dad was telling about this story, and then he also heard from some Maharaj. I don't just wanted to ensure the authenticity of that story, whether it happened or not.
I haven't read about it. I haven't heard, but that doesn't mean I have read everything. But love to find out more about it. It sounds like a wonderful story. So if I come across, I'll let you know.
Yes. I was asking and it's like because sometimes one particular day.
Your connection was not very good. Couldn't hear everything. Okay, so I guess we can stop here. You all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhupada.